I do have some special tricks for graphing linear equations that will make it super fast, okay? But don't discount that input-output graphing because it's a great thing to fall back on if you're having trouble graphing or if you're graphing something that's not a line, okay? So before we get to our lesson, I would like to review, and then we're going to use that review as a jumping off point for what we're going to do next. Now, that quiz was pretty rusty. I think some of you forgot how we were graphing these things previously, the input-output graphing. So this is going to be a good review for you because I'm going to have you guys graph this equation using the input-output method. Okay. Now, a lot of times I've been giving you the 3 points to plug in to graph your line. You don't have to use my 3 points. But I always like to have one negative, one be 0, and one be a positive number. So I'll just put those there. But if you want to do like -2, 0, 2, whatever you want to do, you can pick your y. Pick your x's. Because remember, your x's are independent. You can pick whatever you want. The y's depend on your x's. All right? You guys are graphing this line using the input-output method. I'm going to get my coordinate planes set up. You guys get it? I'm going to go through and just graph it too so we can make sure that ours is the same. If I plug in -1 here, I get +3. If I plug in 0, I get 1. If I plug in 1, I get -1. Okay? So then I can go through and plot these points. So if my x is -1, my y is 3. If my x is 0, my y is 1. If my x is 1, my y is -1. And like I've said before, if you've done it correctly, your dots will line up. So if they don't line up, check your math. Does your line look like my line? Yes? Okay. And let me just fill this in real quick too, just for the sake of having it there, if anyone needs it. Okay. Now, this is the method you guys have learned how This is the method that you guys have been using to graph lines, okay? Let's take a look at some things about this graph. What is the y-intercept of this graph? 0, 1. It's right here, right? Here's your y-intercept. And this is the point 0, 1. Or remember, we have that variable for the y-intercept, which is the b. So b is equal to 1. All right? What is the slope of this line? Irvin?
-2.
-2. Is that what you guys were going to say, Carl?
Yeah.
Yeah, -2? Okay. So if I do the little trick here, you can use the slope formula, but you can also do this. You're going down 2 over 1. So we can say that the slope, the m, is -2. Okay. If you guys are going to sit together, you have to... Okay. Looking at the equation, do you see those numbers? Okay, your y-intercept is 1, and I see a 1 right here. Your slope is -2. I see a -2 right here. So the information you need, the y-intercept and the slope, are right there in the equation. So let me show you a trick. We're going to now graph it just using the information from the equation. So just a reminder before we do that though, here's the form. This is the formula for all linear equations. And the m is your slope. The b is your y-intercept. So put a coordinate plane on your paper, and I'm going to show you how to graph it, just using the slope and the y-intercept from the equation. Okay, so here's what we do. First of all, our equation's right here, and the number being added or subtracted at the end there is always your y-intercept. So I'm going to plot the y-intercept first. That is the point 0, +1. Okay, so since there's a 1 there, that means your y-intercept is 1. Now what we can do is we can use the slope to plot more points. Well, we know that the slope is -2. Well, remember that -2 is the same as -2 over 1. So that tells me to go down 2 over 1, and we can put another point. Then I'm going to go down 2 over 1 and put another point. So I started at my y-intercept, which is 1, and then I used the slope to go down and over, put a point, down and over, put a point. You can put as many points as you want. Do you see how they're all nicely lined up like that? We can connect them to graph our line. Does this graph look like this one? Yes, it does. Okay. And when you guys get really good at this, it'll be super fast. You'll plot your y-intercept, you'll use your slope, and then bam, you'll have the line. Okay? So let's try another one. Let me move my paper up a little bit. We have the equation y is equal to 2/3 x plus 7. I'm going to make my coordinate plane kind of, actually, you know what? I am going to just change it because it will make me feel a lot better. The 7 is a really big number and it makes it hard to graph. So let's do 3. I should have done this in the last class too. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so I'm going to put my coordinate plane on my paper. And I'm going to walk you through this. Okay. So my y-intercept is right here. So this is my y-intercept. And this right here is my slope. So the first thing we do is we plot a point at the y-intercept. Since our y-intercept is +3, we're going to put a point at 3 on the y-axis right here. Okay. Now, the slope is positive and it's 2/3. The top number is your rise, the bottom number is your run. So that means we can rise up 2, run 3. Rise up 2, run 3. And we're kind of going off our graph a little bit, but you get the idea here. And there's your line. Okay. How are you feeling about it so far? Need a little more practice, thumbs to the side? Okay. Let's write the steps down for how we do this. And then I want to just do one more example where you have a negative y-intercept so you can see what that looks like. So we have our steps. Step 1, we're going to plot the y-intercept. Step 2, we're going to use the slope to plot more points. And then step 3 is create a line through the points. Okay. So let's try this again, but with a negative y-intercept so you can see, okay? I'll leave this up for just a second. I can tell some of you are still writing. Robbie, if you need me to move it up, just let me know, okay? You good? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and try this out. One more time. Let's do this equation because this has a negative y-intercept, okay? So for this one, if you're subtracting this last number, then we assume that the slope or the y-intercept is negative, okay? So for this problem, the slope, which we use m for the variable, is equal to 2. which is the same as 2 over 1. So that means you're going to rise up 2 and go over 1. Okay? The y-intercept is, we use the variable b. And because this is minus 5, we put negative 5. Okay. Now that we have that information pulled out of our equation, we can use it to graph our line. So I'm going to create my coordinate plane. Okay. If you look at the steps on the other side of the page, we're going to plot the y-intercept first. So the y-intercept in this case is negative 5. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is negative 5 on the y-axis. And my slope is 2 over 1. And because it's positive, that means we're going to go up and over. And we always go to the right. So I'm going to go up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. You can do that as many times as you want. And then you're going to connect it to make a line. Okay. So make sure you're using that y-intercept and your slope, okay? You can, don't forget how to use that input-output graphing technique, but this one will make it easy for you to just quickly graph those linear equations. Yes, Megan? I put both in there so that it would give you the right answer no matter what. Yeah, I put both forms. That's a good question. Anyone else have questions? I'm going to walk around. So if you're not getting this, please let me know before you leave because I want to make sure you have this for tonight. Yeah, Trent?
So for the homework, we just have to make the graph like this.
Yeah, just graph it. So it's going to ask you what the y-intercept is, what the slope is, and then it's going to have you graph it. But again, you can't put that graph in the answer checker. So I just put a note there that says you need to graph it, but I'm collecting this on paper tomorrow. What? Okay, here is the table of contents for you guys.